I did want to see what I'm calling the John Mozeliak showcase tonight. That's basically what this is, because you got your Randy Arozarena and Adolis Garcia starting in the American League in the outfield. You got in the National League, you got the starting pitcher, Zach Gallen, traded away by John Mozeliak, and you have the phenomenal catcher, Sean Murphy, who is having a monster season. He, of course, is the starting catcher representing the Atlanta Braves in tonight's NL lineup. So that's one guy the Cardinals could have had, but, they couldn't possibly part with Dylan Carlson, ever, So, they didn't want to give away Lars Nootbaar, and I think maybe that's, in retrospect, unless Nars can really turn it up. He's been very disappointing so far this season. And him and Carlson both. We'll talk about that later, but injuries have been a big issue. But whatever else the A's asked for, because that's it's the same old song, and John Mozeliak thinks the people of St. Louis are dumb because, the Atlanta Braves get Sean Murphy without giving up all that much. Now, granted, in a three-way deal, they parted with William Contreras. But if you're getting Sean Murphy and you already have Travis d'Arnaud, you don't need William Contreras. He's kind of redundant at that point. So it's funny how the Braves get the guy that I think's the best catcher in baseball right now. They get him for William Contreras, who was an all-star as a rookie last year. But again, he was expendable. And I'm not dissing him. I'm just saying it made sense for Atlanta to say, hey, man, good bat. But this is a chance to get a guy. We've talked with his agent. We can sign him to a long-term deal. We just got to make this move. And they were right. But it's always funny, and Jim Hewer and I have talked about this for years, and I've talked about it on other shows at other stations. It's always funny how the Cardinals are the only team that all the other teams asked to give up the top 20 prospects in a deal, Well, the price was we thought it was excessive. They asked for things we weren't willing to do. And yet you see the Dodgers, you see Tampa Bay, you see a number of other smart organizations. They managed to make trades for big players without giving up anything that they're afraid to lose or reluctant to lose. Why is it that the Dodgers can never be talked in, that no one asks the Dodgers, we need to have your top 3 prospects? Because the Dodgers say no. Every single time. No. Not going to happen. They hang up, phone rings later. Well, how about if we do this? No. Not going to happen. Then there's a third call or email, and it's well, what if we do this? How about your 5th prospect? Okay, we can do that. But with Mo, I want to know what negotiations there are. Because unless David Forst, the general Forst, the general manager of the A's, unless he's got some grudge against the Cardinals, why would he demand more from the Cardinals than he would, say, 2 or 3 other teams who were trying to get Murphy? Well, I can tell you why. He isn't. This is just Mozeliak playing the song, hoping he can trick everyone again. Bloggers, well, you can't expect Mo to give up 27 to his top prospects, A lot of people fall for that stuff, and I'm exaggerating because I'm obnoxious. So, starting lineups tonight, American League, Marcus Semien at second base, Shohei Ohtani, I never heard of him, DH. Randy Arozarena in left, Corey Seager, the shortstop. Batting cleanup, Yandy, I think, Diaz at first base in Tampa Bay. I see him play, he's great. You know me in names. Adolis Garcia in right field. Then it's Austin Hayes from the Orioles in center field. Josh Jung, that excellent rookie from Texas, the third baseman tonight. And then catcher Jonah Heim, who I wasn't all that familiar with, but he's another really good young catcher in the game. That's the American League. National League, you got the best. Ohtani's the best player in baseball, but he's in his own category. Seriously, he's in his own category. But in terms of the best position player in baseball, I think it's obviously the guy batting leadoff for Atlanta tonight, Ronald Acuna Jr., followed by Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, J.D. Martinez, Nolan Arenado, Luis Arai, Sean Murphy, Corbin Carroll, and another Atlantan, Orlando Arcia. And so the Braves apparently 2/3 of the National League roster are Atlanta Braves, something like that. But they deserve it. They are right now the best team in baseball. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It doesn't mean they're going to stay there. But man, oh man, oh man, if you just look at all the winning they've done and best record in the game, but they've just been rolling over people. And they don't play in an easy division. They don't. Because, I mean, if everyone's, down on the Mets, which I understand, don't get me wrong, but the Mets aren't the Oakland A's, and that is a tough real estate there in the NL East. I look at it this way. Okay, the Miami Marlins are much better than people expected, and the Mets are not as good as expected. But from top to bottom, it is still a very, very tough division. And I tell you what, like the Washington Nationals don't have – their record is slightly worse than the Cardinals. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're great. But they're getting better, and they're young, and young teams are pretty feisty. And another guy that some people thought might be in the John Mozeliak showcase tonight, Lane Thomas, of course, wasn't invited, but he would be on the traveling squad or the taxi squad. And listen, yeah, I know I'm being unfair. I would have made that trade, Lane Thomas for John Lester, because they needed Lester. But that in of itself is a reflection on John Mozeliak and the job he's done, just neglecting the starting pitching every year and then having to scramble. Because I don't think Lane Thomas had a future here, but that also tells us something about something. Because it's funny how these guys go elsewhere and they blossom. I don't get it. I just don't get it. But we have to stop viewing the Cardinals like they're the team they once were in terms of the way they're run and the decisions they make and their talent procurement and their judgment in trades. We can't pretend that it's 10 years ago or whatever. That kind of Cardinal acumen, intelligence, savviness, that's no longer here. It doesn't exist. So we just have to accept it for what the new Cardinals are, pertaining to how smart they are in making their baseball decisions. And we just have to, I don't say we have to accept it, but we have to adjust and realize until there's changes made, you're going to see the same movie over and over again. I mean, how many guys have to go to other places to become all-stars before Bill DeWitt wakes up, I mean, seriously, right, Jim? I don't know.
I'm there with you.
I don't know how if your whole thing is player personnel efficiency and you draft or you sign and develop players, and why do they have to go somewhere else to become stars? That's supposed to be the entire crux of your philosophy. And yet they can't even get that right. I mean, it's just really, I don't know what the word is, sickening. It's ridiculous. I mean, anyway, Jim, as always, I always cut right back in. So I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I really think we're getting to a cross in the road where the Cardinals have to start looking at not identifying the talent, because I think they're doing a good job of getting the drafting and getting them here. When they get here, everything stalls. When they get to the major leagues, it's stalling. And, you're talking about the guys that are in this game tonight that were here. Well, when they got here, they were stalled out. Now, Rosarina didn't get a chance to play, but Garcia his potential wasn't realized. Zach Gallen he's been traded twice, by the way, not just the Cardinals.
Oh, I know. That's right.
But to your point, and even Lane Thomas, Lane was messed up when he got here. And he couldn't throw. He couldn't play the outfield for whatever reason.
They loved him when they first got him because he was good. And then he got hurt.
And then
he started feeling all kinds of pressure because the Cardinals were building him up in the local media of ours. And listen, I've been guilty of this in the past. I basically thought that like Joe DiMaggio was reincarnated. The way all these people were slobbering over.
Yes. I'm there, and I really think they got to reevaluate what they're doing to develop the players once they get them at the major league level. And I think that's also part of the reason you mentioned Lars not being available in a trade. Well, I think they're scared to death they're going to make that same mistake again.
I agree.
And the Carlson situation is the same thing. And I'll be honest, Carlson's just wallowing in nowhere land right now.
He's a pretty average guy. He's not awful. He's just average. They got to do better than that. They got to get guys who are above average in that lineup, and they got to identify their talent better. Listen, I'm going to try to find this, and we can talk about it later because I don't have a hell of a lot to talk about. Usually I can give 1-hour speeches on the Cardinals. I mean, I can do that. But we have two guests, and they're kind of spaced out, and I've got some segments to fill, and I always do it. It's just a matter of getting fired up about putting them in order, and I'm trying to figure out there's another topic or two I need to get fired up about. And I was doing some reading over the weekend. There's a really good site called Defector.com. It's sports related. And you've got some really good writers and analysts on there. I mean, it's very underrated. It is a subscription, and doesn't cost much, and I pay for it. They have a guy named Roth who does baseball analysis. And he wrote a couple things recently where I went reading about it. I went, wow.
Yeah.
He didn't specifically write about the Cardinals, but the way he's describing the mistakes people make in, hollering about, advanced metrics and saying, well, this team's got an advantage in advanced metrics this and advanced metrics that, and you got Jim Edmonds and all these analysts on local broadcasts like hollering at the clouds, Well, back in my day, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know why you need all this launch angle stuff because it works, Jim. Sorry, if singles hitters, there's still room for them, but it's just not as important. Power wins, and you can deny it all you want, but the facts bear that out 100% of the time. Not in terms of a winning percentage of 1,000, but power wins, especially in big games in October. Not an opinion, it's a fact. I gave the numbers the other day. Anyway, he concluded, he said, analytics have a role. I mean, analytics are there for everybody, and in his opinion, everyone's got access to the same information, so there's no big, huge separation in terms of who's the best at analytics. It's like the Cardinals lost their advantage because all the other teams figured out how to get access to the same information, analytics information, and they accessed it, and then they found ways to kind of enhance their system to be even better and more astute at that. But that's been going on for a long time, and there's no more little secrets anymore. Everybody can do that stuff. So what the writer said, and it smacked me like a brick, he said, what people are overlooking, and he was making the point for all these old school guys like hollering and bawling their eyes out and whining about, metrics. And like Roth pointed out, it isn't the metrics anymore because everyone has it. The teams that are now like the perpetual winners, you look at those teams. He mentioned the Dodgers. He mentioned the Rays. I'll have to go back and look at the piece. And he said what separates them is that they consistently know how to make their players better. It ain't metrics. They may find something, sure, but that information is available to everybody. If you say, well, what do we have to do? You can identify problems with it. Okay, well, he's got to do this, and we now know what to work on because we did a deep dive into all the metrics, and okay, this is what we got to work on. But his point, which was just wonderful, because it applies to what we're seeing with this organization. The consistent winners now are the teams that get players, maybe in trades, or get players that other teams have overlooked and figured out, hey, look, we can improve this guy. We know exactly what's wrong with him, and it won't take much to kind of turn him around. We can do this. And he said that's what the San Francisco Giants' specialty is.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of dumb people in the game who look at the Giants and are like, well, man, that's just like a house of mirrors. This is all some magic trick. They're a joke. They've got all these metrics. Who are these guys? They don't got any superstars. Yeah, that's the point, Dumbo. Because they have talent that comes in all sizes, and they find they identify the strength of each player and pitcher, and they're so smart that, unlike what we're seeing here with the iPads and all that, sometimes you got to look at the player and say, you know what, man, if we can just get this guy to focus on using this pitch more often, we can tweak this and he'll be a lot better. No, they're looking at the iPad. The good teams can look at a player. The good baseball people and the coaches and the managers can look at a player. I think this is also true in Milwaukee, and say, well, wait a minute. We can do something with this dude. We can. Yeah, if you can go get him or you want to take a flyer on him, it's nothing to lose anyway. We think we can make him better. And I read that, and I'm like, hallelujah. Hallelujah, because this is the thing that has been missing in St. Louis. And I'm not saying that they don't make any players better, because no one bats 0-0-0 and no one bats 1,000. In other words, team success with making players better. But you can identify the teams who do it well because they do it well year after year after year after year. And the Cardinals are no longer one of those teams. Remember the devil magic phrase?
Oh, yeah.
Where'd they find Alan Craig? What round was he drafted at? Hey, where'd they get Matt Carpenter? He was drafted when? Mm-hmm. You know, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Relief pitchers who come here and used to come here and get better, like Edwin Mojica. Who was that submarine pitcher that they said? Nishik, right?
Yeah, he came here and did some real nice things. Got himself a new contract.
They signed him to a minor league deal. And they used to find those guys all the time. They don't do it anymore. And the other thing, and I know I'm like jumping all over the place, but the other thing, you look at the Braves, you look at so many organizations, what do you see? You see them putting a lot of money, and there is a draft pool for international signings. It's not unlimited. Everyone's capped at a certain level. The Cardinals are always trying to find bargains internationally instead of going for the top talent. The other teams that are much smarter, who know what the hell to do with their money, look at the Atlanta Braves, and I'll just shut up after that. I mean, you just look at the rosters of the really good teams. You see all these outstanding international players. And that's because the astute organizations know that, yeah, you're going to swing and miss sometime, but if you go after the best international talent, hey, we know that those guys are good enough to do great in Major League Baseball. You're just going to have to pay a lot of money for it, or you're going to have to pay maybe more than you want to, but you got to do it. But they're pretty much a sure thing or close to it. So what are you afraid of? If you know how to scout and you're confident in your baseball people, then why would you be so scared of offering somebody more than $5,000 to sign or whatever? Again, I'm exaggerating. The Cardinals always go internationally. They always had like kind of right to the bottom 2 or 3 shelves. Always. Even the guys like Carlos Martinez that they did have some success with, right?
Yeah.
The only reason they got him because the Red Sox screwed up. And they signed him to what was basically an illegal contract and is under a different name or something. And the Cardinals just scooped in and grabbed him because he was available. They didn't pay a fortune for him. And then even when they do have these guys, Garcia, Rosarina, 2 Cubans, what do they do?
Just let them sit.
Let them sit. They don't play him. Then the guys go somewhere else and they become stars. And meanwhile, they think Tyler O'Neill's the new Bambino or something, right?
That's what they told us.
I just it's just a sad thing when you see a smart organization just kind of lose the brain power. The things that they used to do so much better than everyone else, or most everyone else. It's just not there. And look, the Homer media people will deny that, and the Cardinals will push back on that. I just look at the facts, man. Show me where their international stars are. Show me where the international talent that raises your entire team. Show me where that is. What are we talking about here? We talking about Genesis Cabrera? Who are we talking about? Seriously. I mean,
it's frustrating.
They traded away Alcantara, of course, and we all know that. But show me who the international impact players they have are. I don't know.
It's a blank sheet of paper right now.
Right?
It's rough. You mentioned the Giants. They're quietly got the last wild card spot in the National League right now. They've just slowly made their way back up in the standings. I don't know if a lot of people have noticed. They're winning ball games again. They're 2.5 out in their division with the Dodgers.
Really good.
I mean, they're playing good baseball. Texter says the Giants are great at gathering role players and then maximizing them to fit into their lineup.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. And listen, they were a 500 team last year. It was just one of those years. A lot of things went wrong. They weren't a bad team. They just had a season that was off. Not a collapse, not a joke. They, sometimes even the smart organizations have too many swings and misses. But if you judge them over the long haul, like Tampa Bay certainly won, other ones we've mentioned. Atlantis absolutely is one. They put their money in the right places. They pick their spots carefully. They hit home runs with spending their money for a good percentage of the time. They hit a home run, so to speak. The teams that do what the Cardinals used to do, they don't do it very well anymore. And all you have to do is watch that All-Star game tonight, because I forgot about this. Derek Gould mentioned it, and we'll take a break here in a minute. I forgot about this, but John Mozeliak told me way back when that they were in. He told me basically, it was off the record at the time. They were in, and they thought they had a good chance to sign Luis Robert, who almost won the home run derby last night. He's having a great year for the White Sox. He's a fearsome player. They thought they had him. They thought they were going to get him. They were right there. But in the end, the big guy, Bill DeWitt, decided that it was too much money. And this is exactly what the hell I'm talking about. And do you know why I know this, or how I know this? Because I asked, when I was working for the other station before I came to 590 The Fan, I actually asked Bill DeWitt about this in a live interview. About, you seemingly were right there in this bidding for Robert, and then you withdrew, and why was that? And he basically said, he didn't even try to finesse it. He said, whatever the figure was, let's say it's like $40 million, okay? Let's just say that. It was a lot of money. He just said, well, when you look at this, success and the fail rates of international players, you got to be careful. We just thought $40 million was too much money. Okay, give that $40 million to Steven Matz then. There you go. How's that working out? Give that $80 million to Mike Leake.
Ooh,
my goodness,
a lot of bad.
But he actually said that.
Well,
I mean, so I'm not like say, well, source told. No, he said it on live radio. So, and they also they always have a way of finishing second on these big international guys. Gurriel, the young Gurriel, who's now with, where's he
Lourdes,
at?
in Arizona, right?
I think he's a really good player. I asked Mo about it. Again, he was. I called Mo. I said, I thought you were going to get him. He said, well, we finished second. Oh, okay. And by the way, if you're blaming John Mozeliak, you're crazy. I don't know what it is about we as a Cardinal Nation populace. We still don't realize, too many of us, that BDJ signs off on this stuff. You got to get the final approval from him. I had someone in Cardinals organization said, don't assume that Mo doesn't want to spend for pitching, because he'll spend for pitching. But you got to take into account that he gets vetoed a lot. Okay. I'll take that under advisement. So that's what I mean. It's just a crazy time in Cardinal land right now, because they've just kind of lost they've lost some of these inside talents they've had as far as evaluating personnel, knowing where to spend their money, and it's really kind of sad. It didn't have to be this way, but that's what happens when you don't do You don't practice strong scrutiny and accountability within your organization to make sure that you're doing the right thing and you're up to speed and you're on top of things and you're not falling behind when you see what other teams are doing. I don't think that internal scrutiny and accountability has been there, and it's getting worse all the time. It just is. All you got to do is look at that mess on defense and fundamentals, right?
Yes. I'm still a little ill because you reminded me of Robert, and I'm going, Robert Garcia Arozarena in the outfield right now? That could have been it? Oh, man.
Oh, yeah. They came in second. Now, that said, I don't know that the $40 million would have gotten them, only because the White Sox would have been right there, and the White Sox were smart. And, again, I know they haven't won a damn thing, but that's really not the point. This is about how they got the player. They were smart because they put Jose Abreu on the case. And Jose Abreu was basically their director of recruiting.
Yeah, that helps.
And Lewis Robert was like, that's my guy, man. He's just taught me so much. I want to go play with him. So they may not have gotten him anyway. The point is they didn't take their best shot. That's the point.
Yep.